Hello and welcome to Legal Bites. If you're new here, my name is Alita. I'm a lawyer licensed in California and DC, and on this channel, we explain the law one bite at a time. We don't give legal advice, but we do talk about how the law works and try to look into our crystal ball to see how things might turn out. If you're enjoying this on YouTube, we'd love it if you could like the video, subscribe to the channel, share it with friends, all the great YouTube-y stuff. And if you want to listen while out and about, we're now offering our live streams in podcast form where you can leave a rating and review. Links are in the description below, as well as to our clips channel where you can find some of the best clips taken from our live streams. Otherwise, if you want to catch me elsewhere, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And if you want to support the channel, you can do so on Locals, Patreon, or by becoming a YouTube member, or by buying some really awesome Legal Bites merch. Again, all links are in the description below. And with that said, let's get into it. Hello. Happy Tuesday. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I hope that you are doing well wherever you are in the world. I hope you're having a good week so far. I hope you had a good weekend. I don't know about you guys. We dealt with a few things in the Bites household this whole last week. I think when we took Andy hiking the weekend before, she drank some bad water because this whole past week she had these bad digestive issues and whatnot. We finally had to take her to the vet a couple times over the weekend. But she's, I think, hopefully finally better now after this mystery illness that we were kind of trying to figure out at home. After I think 2 IVs, an antibiotic shot, and 3 days of meds. I think we're good. So, anyhow, I hope you guys we're having a good time. And yes, thank you guys. Thank you. No, not Indy, poor doggo. I know I see you guys in the chat. I think she's doing a bit better. She's much perkier now. And I think she's going to be okay. But I appreciate you guys being here. I appreciate you guys, your support in the chat. You guys are I love you guys. Love you guys so much. So we've got some interesting stuff to talk. Oh, but first, let me say hi. Let me say hi to some folks. I saw some folks that were saying where they're tuning in from. Aaron H, good morning from Orlando. Not quite cool enough to open the windows. Usually I was able to last week in the evenings for a bit, which was amazing. Fantastic. Pamela C, finally cooling down in Arizona, enjoying having my windows open at night. Love it. Fun times. You're in Texas. Hello. Happy to see you from Texas. Ottilie Bell, good afternoon from Sweden. Love it. So, all right. Oh, and we've got another one. Iris, oh, thank you. Hope she gets well soon. But there was another one here. Oh, we've got West Virginia. We've got Kelly Clancy in South Carolina. I love seeing where you guys are from. Oh my gosh, Chris Mullen, it's late for you. I feel like I always see someone in Australia, and I always say that when I pull them up when they're coming in from Australia. Fantastic. Let's see, Genergy from Sickerville, New Jersey farm. Fantastic. Merciless Base, hello from Missouri. KK Weston, morning from Canada. Oh, I love it. I love seeing all you guys here. Lady B, hello everyone from the UK. Queen B, Missy, morning late from Illinois. We've also got Sarah Shanzer. Hi from Israel. Hello. Joanna, not from Maine. B, hi from Germany. Sending hugs and scratches to you and your floofs. Thank you. And Yulia B from Korea. Love it. I love seeing you guys. So yeah, thanks you guys for tuning in today. And I think we're going to have an interesting conversation today because, we've talked about these DV cases quite a bit on this channel, especially since the Depp trial, Depp v. Heard. That was obviously a big one on this channel. But, since then, we've talked a lot about Manson. We've started to talk about Masterson. I had a video yesterday that was talking about Kevin Spacey. And now, we had Kevin Spacey's trial just started at the end of last week. One of his trials, he's got one coming up later in 2023 in London, but he's got this one brought by Anthony Rapp in New York. Then today we've got 2 trials that are starting. Danny Masterson, Harvey Weinstein. He's on trial again because he's I saw in the chat earlier, I think it was Pamela C that was saying isn't he already in jail? He is. He was convicted in New York for similar allegations, and now he's being charged in Los Angeles as well. So he and Danny Masterson are, I think, actually even in the same exact courthouse and starting their trials on the same exact day. And when I put these cases together, I want you guys to know and to understand that we are obviously going to be looking at each of these cases individually, right? Because there are obviously these are different defendants, different allegations. I mean, similar allegations, right? But different people, different events. These things have different circumstances. So when we talk about all of these different cases, we're going to be looking at each of them individually. One of the things that I thought was very interesting was I came across an article from the Hollywood Reporter, and we're going to go through that article today. But basically, before we go into it, I'm going to do a little bit of a summary, I guess, or I don't know, maybe summary is not the right word. Anyway, I'm sort of like word vomiting at this moment, but uh, it's specifically about Danny Masterson, the Danny Masterson trial and the Harvey Weinstein trial. And it talks about the use of character evidence in California in these kinds of cases, and specifically where there are multiple allegations by multiple, I mean, in this case, it's multiple women, but obviously it could be multiple women, multiple men, what have you. And so the reason why uh, Marilyn Manson, sorry, brain fart. The reason why Marilyn Manson is on the thumbnail, even though he's not in the article, is because it seems like it's a case that kind of fits in with this whole conversation, because we've been talking about Manson so much on this channel, and there is still a possibility that some charges could be filed against him in Los Angeles. I mean, if you've been following this case, you've been following kind of a lot of the conversation around these cases. I think you probably are aware of the Evan Rachel Wood, Elma Gore, folks that are posting on Instagram and other places. Like Evan Rachel Wood's been posting a lot in her stories about, like, hey, why hasn't he been charged? I filed charges or pressed charges, like a long time ago. I filed reports, I should say, a long time ago, and and they're not doing anything. There's supposedly an investigation, but no one's doing anything. So it's still unclear. It looks like the DA and the LAPD have been sort of tossing around this political football back and forth a little bit about, like, oh, like we're waiting on them, or oh, like we gave them stuff, or oh, like we're, like they're just sort of tossing it around. So we don't really know what's going to be happening specifically in that in that uh um that case about, like, the possibility of criminal charges against Manson. But if they do, this all will fit, because we're talking about, like I said, multiple women that are making allegations against these defendants in an SA sort of environment. Specifically, they're making SA claims. So, oh, hey, Rick, how's it going? I see Rick Hogue in the chat. Happy to see you here. I hope you had a good Hangouts and Headlines, or Headlines and Hangouts. I always get them mixed up. H&H. I hope you had a good H&H. I saw you were talking about the Kardashian SEC case. I wasn't sure if you got that from me, but I'm glad that you talked about it, because I felt like that was an interesting one that was like right up your alley. So, anyhow, all right, let's get into the article. So, because like I said, it doesn't talk about Manson at all, but we can sort of, like, you can understand as we go through why Manson could be, someone who would be interested in this kind of conversation. Okay. Anyhow. All right, let's get into it. So, like I said, this is from the Hollywood Reporter. It's called How Multiple Accusers Create Almost Insurmountable Cases for Harvey Weinstein and Danny Masterson. Legal observers discuss the shared factors that could sway juries in the criminal rape trials for the former mogul and That 70s Show star. So, I mean, obviously, I fully anticipate that we are going to be seeing some editorial. Here we go. Some editorializing on this article that, yeah, maybe okay, maybe not. But my first read through it was like, all right, pretty fair. Like they're talking to a number of legal minds, I could say, which, yeah, articles have done that before too, and they have tended to cherry pick certain positions on these things. So let's see what they have to say. But anyway, with that caveat aside, let's get further into it. Okay. Two of the most high-profile, closely watched criminal cases of the Me Too era are headed to trial in October, starting within a day of each other. Harvey Weinstein and Danny Masterson will face juries at the Clara Shortbridge Foltz Courthouse in downtown LA, defending against allegations that they raped multiple women. Weinstein is charged with 11 counts of sex crimes, including rape, in connection with the assaults of 5 women from 2004 to 2013, which cumulatively carry a sentence of up to 140 years. Masterson is charged with 3 counts of rape between 2001 and 2003, which collectively could mean up to 45 years in prison. Both have steadfastly maintained their innocence. Ahead of the trials, The Hollywood Reporter spoke with legal observers who note that sexual assault exists in a special domain of law. A statute in the California Evidence Code will allow jurors to use individual charges to corroborate others and to consider evidence involving prior bad acts. A widely wielded, though little discussed statute will allow the juries to consider the cases in their entirety as opposed to individually assessing each charge. When you have multiple acts of alleged sexual violence, each act is usable to corroborate the facts of the others, says Halim Dunedina. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, a former prosecutor and judge who is now a criminal defense attorney. According to the Judicial Council of California Advisory Committee on Criminal Jury Instructions, if jurors find that prosecutors proved beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant committed one or more of the crimes, they may conclude he was disposed or inclined to commit sexual offenses and, based on that, reach the conclusion that he is guilty of the other charges too. So, before I go on further into this, I want you guys to understand why that is incredibly strange when we are talking about this kind of stuff. We talked a bit about, we've talked about character evidence from time to time on this channel. Character evidence is basically where somebody tries to put on evidence of a person's moral character, saying that they have the propensity to do something because that's the kind of person that they are. In other words, where somebody is on trial for murder, saying this person has a, let's say murder with a knife. This person has a propensity for threatening people with knives or for using knives against other people. And so therefore, they must have done that in this case too. The problem with that is that, before I say that, there is a rule against the use of character evidence. So it is, generally speaking, not admissible. There are certain exceptions to the rule. There's a whole list of them, but they are incredibly specific. One of them is where somebody has basically established a modus operandi, like they have a very specific list of things that they do in these various acts that they have performed over time, and they've been able to show that they were responsible for previous ones. Like I remember when I was taking evidence in law school, and there was an example that my professor gave that was basically where you have let's say you have a widower. A widow who has had multiple husbands in the past, and each time they have somehow mysteriously died of poisoning, and a very specific type of poisoning. It was arsenic, and it was always on like a specific date, and there was always like a very specific way that it would happen, and that they found that she actually had been responsible for one or two of them, or 3 or 4 of them. That is, if they are able to nail that down specifically enough, you can establish a pattern or practice, essentially, where somebody has a modus operandi, an MO of behavior that that you're able to say, this is what she does. So, she did XYZ here. She fulfilled all of these steps in this case, fill in the box. But otherwise, you can't just say, someone has run a red light before, and so therefore they must have run a red light this time. That's improperly using character evidence. Now, the reason for this is because it has an inflammatory effect on the jury. It has a tendency to distract from the evidence actually dealing with the crime that is charged. So, you're pulling the attention of the jury away from the actual evidence, the actual, whether it's circumstantial evidence or whether it's testimonial or whether there's DNA or whether there's whatever. And you're basically distracting them from all of those things, and you're pulling them away to, yeah, but they did this like 5 or 10 years ago. And so therefore, probably they probably didn't learn from their mistakes. And so therefore, you should convict them. Um, so it basically it's a fundamental aspect of the presumption of innocence. Now, when we're talking about DV cases, um, in the past, while there has always been this rule against character evidence, in the past, before there was changes to legislation, they did allow for an alleged victim in these kinds of cases to for the defendant to introduce evidence of her prior acts having to do with intimate relations, we should say. So, was she relatively morally loose? Was she a floozy? Did she, because if she slept around before, she probably wanted it this time. That literally was the logic that would be used. And so, what happened was there was a change in the laws so that there was something called rape shield laws. So that basically what um what they what the defense can't get into is a woman's, prior intimate relationships, whether she was, essentially a nun, or whether she was, incredibly free loving and freewheeling, right? They're not allowed to use that to basically say, do you really think she would say no in this instance? Because that's improper. That's improper under current rape shield laws. But now there is also, I say now, this happened like in the 90s. This was changed. There's also a new exception to the rule against character evidence in California for these kinds of specific cases. And that is where there are prior bad acts having to do with SA acts. Like, and it's very broad. There's a pretty broad uh, um, range of definition as to what kind of acts can be included with it. And it's not even that they have to have been convicted or charged or even arrested for these things. All there has to be is an allegation and evidence behind it, and it's potentially admissible in these kinds of cases. So what that means, if you are looking at a case like Manson, regardless of whether you think that, whether you're for Evan Rachel Wood or you're for Marilyn Manson, or if you're just in the middle trying to, analyze it as it comes along, it's potentially troubling because it seems like, he's made these allegations that these other allegations against him that came out roughly around the same time. He's saying that these are all a concoction, that these are all sort of a scheme, a plan where all of these things are made up. It's essentially a hoax. And that this is all just sort of a false campaign against him to take him down for some reason. And that it's being led by Evan Rachel Wood and Ilma Gore. So if you believe that is possible, which I believe that is possible, whether that's the case in Manson, I don't know. Whether that's the case in Masterson, I don't know. Whether it's the case in Weinstein, I don't know. But that one is the one that I'm the least likely to give leeway because I'm very well aware that he was already convicted in New York for these kinds of things, and I'm very well aware of the pernicious stories that did follow him, over the years, where people were joking about these kinds of things, and then it became, oh, actually, that's not proper to joke about these things anymore. So yeah, that's the one that seems like there's a lot of evidence to support those allegations. The other ones I am much more new to, and I'm much more, although I'm still, I'm open on all of these cases to have my mind changed on anything. But in Masterson and Manson, those are the ones that I'm much more open to. Whether or not these things happened, I don't know. But the thing that makes it potentially troubling if you are a defendant and you have been accused of all kinds of acts by a number of women. If those are all untrue, and it's you're a victim of a campaign that is just trying to take you down with no, with uh, no truth behind it, that's troubling, because those mere allegations can then be almost used to bolster one another in a way that they wouldn't individually be able to do so. So, anyway, I hope that all makes sense to all of you guys, but that is basically like the sort of a little bit of a breakdown of the character evidence, like the basic character evidence rule, rape shield laws, and then section 1108 of the California Evidence Code, which basically like allows for this bit wider latitude for people to admit this kind of evidence. And before I move on, let me just say one more thing, that we have talked about cases where you are allowed to bring in a defendant's criminal record on certain things, but usually they are so incredibly limited. Oftentimes we're talking about specifically felonies, specifically crimes that have to do with dishonesty. And the difference between these kinds of exceptions and the section 1108 exceptions here for California SA cases, criminal cases, by the way. I should have made that very clear. Those are just criminal cases where this evidence rule comes into play. So I totally just diverted myself. But oh my gosh, I lost my train of thought. This happens to me all the time. I lost the thread. Maybe I'll pick it up again when I am going back. Oh, I remember. Okay, so those are cases. So unlike section 1108, the normal exception to allow other criminal acts from the past are usually just crimes of like dishonesty, where it goes to the credibility of the defendant, whether or not they are whether or not they are telling the truth on the stand, essentially, or whether or not they have credibility. So but the difference here is that in California, this can be used in criminal cases involving SA to actually help prove that the SA itself in this particular charge happened. So okay, let's get back to not that that. Let's get back to the article. Okay. In Masterson's case, oh, wait, sorry, I skipped a paragraph. The evidence statute is not reported enough considering the role it plays in sex crimes charged every day in the justice system, Danny Dina notes. It can take two or more individuals' weak cases and really make them an overwhelmingly strong case. In Masterson's case, prosecutors allege a pattern of behavior, which attorneys say is an important factor. Masterson is accused of inviting each of the women to his Hollywood Hills home, giving them a drink that made them feel discombobulated, and dragging them into a jacuzzi before taking them upstairs and raping them. That's the MO, says Danny Dina, who emphasizes the consistency of the accounts. The use of drugging to incapacitate complaining witnesses, along with the hot tub, is a compelling piece of evidence. Yeah, and we've talked about, when you have certain accusations that line up as well, that can be compelling up to a certain point, though, because if they are so lined up that they seem like they're identical, and it seems like there has been some sort of conversation beforehand that would allow them to line up their testimony together with one another, that can start to look synthetic as well. So it depends on how that comes out and how that plays in front of a jury. And, at the end of the day, it depends on what the jury thinks. Notes criminal defense attorney Julia Jane. In the absence of physical evidence where cases are old, it adds a lot of weight to the prosecution's case. It gives more context to the relationship because the defense is going to say it was consensual. Prior bad acts, even if uncharged, can be introduced into trial even though police decline to press charges. And so that's such an important point here, is that just the fact of someone having Just the fact of someone having been accused of something can then become evidence that can support the charges that are actually there. It opens the door potentially for someone who is already has certain criminal charges against them for other accusations to come up and be made, whether they are true or not, and potentially be weaponized. Now, at the same time, if that person actually is guilty, then they're guilty, right? We're not really concerned about that kind of a case. We're concerned about the situation where someone has been wrongfully accused and is on trial for this. And we are, I'm not going into this to try to assume one way or another about any of these defendants that we're talking about here. Okay. One of Masterson's accusers reported her alleged rape to police in 2004. Even though no charges were filed against the actor, who didn't respond to requests for comment, prosecutors could introduce that report. Meanwhile, Weinstein faces the same hurdle of prosecutors presenting evidence of prior bad acts. In addition to the 5 Jane Does whose accounts are related to the charges, 4 other women will testify that Weinstein assaulted them. Los Angeles County Judge Lisa Lynch is excluding testimony from actresses Rose McGowan and Daryl Hannah, the former because many of the accounts were more recent than McGowan's, and the latter because Hannah didn't allege assault. Weinstein appealed his New York conviction based on the introduction of prior bad acts testimony from 3 women, but the appeals court in June found that evidence of the mogul's alleged uncharged crimes was fair game to counter the defense's arguments that Weinstein believed his accusers consented. Judah Engelmeyer, a representative for Weinstein, says the extraneous information taints the producer's image and shouldn't be allowed. He tells THR that it's patent prejudicial overkill purely intended to paint the darkest portrait of Harvey to ensure jurors are so horrified they feel they have no other choice. Which is exactly what I would expect a representative for Weinstein to say, right? Awaiting trial, Weinstein sits in LA's Twin Towers Correctional Facility, where he's continuing to serve his existing 23-year sentence. The jury in his LA trial will be allowed to consider his New York conviction. As with Masterson, prosecutors are expected to present a consistent narrative. Weinstein weaponized his Hollywood mogul status to lure women and entertainment aspirations into hotels where he would corner and assault them. The attorneys consulted by THR say they expect the state law involving evidence in sexual assault trials to weigh strongly against both men. Notes Joshua Ritter, a defense attorney and former LA prosecutor, each allegation from each individual victim might not be all that strong if it was alone, but when you put them all together, it's almost insurmountable. So, this is a very, very interesting thing to think about, right? Because I think that when it comes to, especially, like I said, especially Harvey Weinstein, we've got somebody who pretty much almost universally people have basically decided this guy did the things that he's been accused of. And that's exactly the way it looks, right? He's already been convicted in New York, just like I said. That was a very well publicized, very publicized trial. um Very publicized, high profile trial, I should say. And so yeah, all of that has played out here. So using that conviction in this particular case, ah it still feels a little off to me personally to say that that can be used to prove the ultimate claim in this particular case, right? And when we're talking about the other one, I mean, in this one, Masterson and potentially in Manson, if he does get criminally charged in his situation, we're talking about people where they haven't actually been even arrested for these kinds of charges, as far as I understand. Um, and then, I mean, other than Masterson getting arrested for this particular case, but that's different, right? We're talking about this is the one that they are trying to prove here. But, you know, we're talking about allegations by other people that could be used to bolster the actual ultimate legal conclusion here. I don't know that I particularly like this rule of evidence. What do you guys think? Do you guys think that that this is a fair rule or not. Because I think um, that there's looking at this from two different angles. We've got on the one hand, we've got due process rights for a criminal defendant. And then on the other hand, we've got the rights of victims coming forward, and also the very delicate situation of trying to try these kinds of cases, because most of them happen in situations where you've got two people in a room, and it's really difficult to parse out what happened between the two of them. It's not like, where we've got somebody driving a car into a mass of people during a holiday parade, right? Where you've got tons of witnesses, you've got tons of people that are able to sort of like collectively put together evidence on what happened. Um, so this is a kind of case where that is already very sensitive, and I absolutely agree that we should be treating these situations sensitively when we are talking about alleged victims, because before the trial has happened, we don't know whether they are actual victims or not. But what if they are completely mistreated along the way and it turns out they actually are victims, right? um that's a potentially a problem. um and but on the other hand, what if it's not a true allegation? What if it's a false allegation? um then we've got somebody who has already been through this whole process of a criminal trial, been put on trial, probably lost their job, lost their reputation, all kinds of things that happen. Um, and in that kind of a case where this kind of tips the scale, it brings me a little bit of a concern. So anyway, those are my thoughts on this. This is a little bit of a shorter live stream. I don't know. I anticipated talking about this for a little bit longer, but we're gonna keep it a little short. Why not? Um, I am so glad that I had you guys here. This has been a wonderful, wonderful topic to talk about. I hope you guys found it interesting or at least informative. And I don't know. I'm looking forward to hearing more about the Danny Masterson and Harvey Weinstein trials that are going to be picking up this week. Are you guys interested in learning more about these cases? My guess is probably yes. I know I am. I certainly am. That and the Kevin Spacey trial. So I think I'm probably going to be posting more VOD updates on those, because those kind of recaps are I think a bit easier to put out, and then they're a little bit more concise, and so people don't have to sit for forever. um but yeah, I think those do well for recaps for these kinds of trials and whatnot. So okay, thanks guys. I see you guys in the chat. Okay, thanks for hanging out with us, Alita. Yeah, of course, thank you for hanging out with me. This has been lovely. This has been really, really nice. And I really appreciate all of you guys for hanging out, for supporting the channel, for helping to create and foster a warm and welcoming environment where we can talk, we can have conversation about some of these very controversial and nuanced topics, and we can do so in a way that is respectful, and still end up coming out of it friends, right? Because that's what this is all about. So thank you. Finally, one last final thank you to the mods. You guys are awesome. You guys are wonderful, and I appreciate the hell out of you. Oh, thanks for the super chat. Crazy Cat Queen says, will you be live streaming any other trials? Yes. So I was fully intending to live stream the Masterson trial if that was going to have any cameras in the courtroom. But unfortunately, it is not going to. But so that's why I'm gonna have to rely on the media reporting, which can be a little but we'll see how that goes. Otherwise, I'm gonna try to get whatever kind of information that I can get out of it. But December, December 19th, there's a trial date set for the Courtney Clenny OnlyFans murder case. So that one's going to be very interesting. I don't know at this point if it is going to be live streamed. My guess is yes. I think I've seen some activity from either Court TV or Law and Crime or someone that was or no, not even. It was the Miami Herald that was petitioning for rights to have access to the hearings and whatnot. Clenny's side was trying to keep things like behind closed doors, because they're trying to sort of minimize the public damage to all of this stuff. But I think there's going to be some people that might be pushing hard for that to be public. And so far, some of the hearings have had cameras in the courtroom. So I really, really want to be live streaming that one as well. So fully expect that from me as well. And also, Sandra Ramirez, you are so kind and generous. Thank you so much for gifting the 10 Legal Bites memberships to people in the chat. That is so incredibly kind of you. And I'm sorry, I would have highlighted you on the screen, but for some reason, StreamYard is super funky about membership chats and whatnot. Fun times. Thanks so much for the super sticker. That is so good. That's such a cute little puppy with a heart. I love it. And we've got, there's another question that I just totally missed. Against the Tide says, will you do the Daybell Vallow case as well as the Daryl Brooks case? I might be picking some testimony to do a live stream react to on that, because that one is just so fascinating. I wasn't planning on doing it because I don't know. It's usually not the kind of, like, I usually focus on like celebrities and that kind of stuff. But that one there's been a lot of very interesting, a lot of incredibly interesting exchanges that have been going on in that courtroom with the defendant, who is a self-declared sovereign citizen who represents himself. There's so much bizarre, peculiar behavior in there. So I might take some sections and live stream a little bit of that one. But the Daybell Vallow case, I know Uncivil Law, Kurt, he's been wanting to live stream that one. And so I want to give him a chance to host a live stream like that, to host a trial stream and go and support him on that one. Also, I might be moving around that time. I can't remember if it's gotten delayed or not. So we're looking at moving at some point in the next, like, however many months. So yeah. And let's see what else. Chris Mullen, thanks so much for becoming a YouTube member. Welcome to Bike Club. So happy to have you here. And Crazy Cat Queen, sorry for the dinky super chat money right now, saving up for more later. Thank you. Really appreciate you. Oh, well, that's so kind of you to say. Thank you. And honestly, like no one should feel obligated to ever super chat this channel ever, ever, ever. I appreciate all of you guys, whether you are just like chatting normal chat in the chat. I'm really having a great way with words. You know what I mean. Like, whether you're just in the normal chat or you're sending a super chat or a super sticker, all of that is always so appreciated. But absolutely not necessary. But thank you so much, and thank you so much for the kind words too. So, anyhow, I think that might be about it for me for this one. Thanks so much for joining me, you guys. I really, really appreciate it. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next